a gray day, so I'm hoping that it clears up a little bit so we can get some decent views from the top of the Tor.
Good morning. We are driving from Gloucestershire down to Somerset, and our destination is Glastonbury. We have been wanting to visit Glastonbury for a long time, and specifically have been wanting to hike to the top of the Tor. So we're going to do a tour, a town tour, and find out about Glastonbury. Our timing is interesting because just this past weekend was the Glastonbury Festival, where half the planet, all the music lovers in the world, descended upon Glastonbury for this gigantic music festival. We are hoping that since there's been a day in between the festival ending and our visit, that most of those folks will have cleared out and there won't be bad traffic. We're also hoping, since it was just summer solstice, that we will get a long day of daylight today and be able to have a great time exploring.
I spoke too soon. 5 minutes later, and we're sitting in stopped traffic on the M5. We're still an hour and 15 minutes away from Glastonbury, so I don't think this is festival traffic, but we're hoping that this traffic does not last for too much longer.
Well, there was a fender bender, and that's why traffic was backed up. So it didn't look like anyone was hurt. So hopefully everyone is okay, and we are now traveling much faster down the M5. So Glastonbury, here we come. We have arrived in Glastonbury and parked in the Draper & Co. car park, which allegedly is one of the closest car parks to hiking the Tor. So we're gonna head out. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's really cloudy. So I'm hoping we have a decent view from up on the Tor, but the good news is it won't be way too hot hiking today. And it was a forecast of some rain, so we'll see what happens. That is a fascinating name for a bakery.
This way to the Tor. This way to the Tor. Obviously, Glastonbury Tor is a special place to be for the summer solstice, which was a couple days ago, so we're not here for that, but we're excited to see the Tor today. It's great that even though it's owned by the National Trust, we can do this hike for free.
The hike starts with a gravel path that is not very steep. Then the hike gets a bit steeper, although there are steps that make it easier. The climb continues to be a bit steep, but we saw hikers of all ages and abilities on the trail. We also saw loads of gorgeous purpley magenta thistles, which I had to stop and film. Therefore, my ascent took much longer than some other hikers. But I mean, honestly, aren't they lovely? And the bees loved them too. And then I had to stop for a magenta selfie, which further slowed my pace. Now we reach the switchback before the final stretch of the walk. But the views keep changing as you climb higher, so frequent photo stops to film the valley below are essential. Here's a look over at the town of Glastonbury. And now for the exciting part, the last straight shot up to the tower. A bit steep and super windy, but totally worth it. And this is the time to stop and get photos of the tower before getting too close to it. But selfies were a challenge because it was so windy that my bangs, aka fringe, were sticking straight up. I loved the flowers on the hillside, the little yellow ones, the bright red poppies, and here you can see one part of the hillside that was just packed with a blanket of thistles. At the top of the Tor, you get an incredible treat of 360-degree views from the 158-meter height. On a clear day, you can see the Somerset Levels, Dorset, Wiltshire, and Wales from the top of the Tor. This is a marker with a compass and map to tell you what to look for in the area. The countryside is just beautiful around here. Unfortunately, it was rather cloudy, so we didn't get to see as far as we might have otherwise. Around here is where the Glastonbury Festival was held the prior weekend. The Glastonbury Tor is an iconic landmark that visitors from all over want to visit when they come to Somerset. It is one of the most sacred landmarks in the West Country. It is steeped in history, mystery, and spiritual significance. The Tor has been a place of pilgrimage for over 1,000 years. Glastonbury Tor is often associated with the Archangel Michael, who symbolizes strength and protection. Some people believe that there are straight lines of energy running across the land called ley lines. Many monuments and sites of religious worship are located on these lines. St. Michael's Line starts at St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall, passes through the Glastonbury Tor, then the Avebury Stone Circles, and ends at the Abbey at Bury St. Edmunds. Tor is a Celtic word for hill, and the conical shape of this tor is naturally occurring. It is comprised of horizontal bands of clay, shale, and limestone with a cap of hard sandstone. These layers were formed during Jurassic times, and beneath them is a chunk of igneous rock that was created by crystallization of volcanic magma, which then pushed up the layers to create this dramatic peak in the Vale of Avalon. It's curious how the sandstone top has resisted erosion while the layers below have eroded through the century, resulting in the steep slopes on the sides of the hill. Some people believe the terraces on the side of the hill are a maze, labyrinth, or spiritual walkway to the summit. There are so many legends associated with the Glastonbury Tor that I can't recap them all in this video. The legend that surprised me the most was that Jesus allegedly came to Glastonbury as a boy with his uncle Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph was a tin merchant and was said to have come to southwest England because of its valuable metal. This legend inspired William Blake to write the famous poem Jerusalem, which, as an American, I've always been puzzled about why that song is such a British anthem. Now I get it. Another legend claims that there is a hidden cave under the hill where you can pass into the fairy realm and find the lord of the Celtic underworld and the cauldron of rebirth. A Christian tradition states that the Holy Grail lies there, brought by Joseph of Arimathea. Both the aforementioned cauldron and the Holy Grail were objects of King Arthur's quests. Glastonbury is claimed to be the Isle of Avalon where King Arthur went after his last battle. The monks of Glastonbury Abbey claimed to have found his grave in 1191, but more on that later. There is also a 13th century legend that St. Patrick returned from Ireland and became leader of a group of hermits at Glastonbury and discovered prehistoric Roman ruins here at the Tor. Archaeological excavations have uncovered evidence of people living on the Tor as early as the 6th century. Monks lived on the Tor for centuries and built several churches. One was destroyed by an earthquake in the 13th century. Then the Church of St. Michael was built in the 14th century. All that remains of it today is the iconic tower at the Tor's peak. Unfortunately, the Tor also has a grisly past. When the abbey was dissolved during the dissolution of the monasteries, the Tor is where the hanging of Richard Whiting took place, along with 2 monks. He was the last Catholic abbot of Glastonbury and was brutally executed on the Tor in 1139 on the orders of Thomas Cromwell, the first Earl of Essex. When I went inside the St. Michael's Tower ruin, there was a young couple from Nottingham and an older man from Glastonbury who apparently sits in the tower and preaches the Gospel of Glastonbury. He was proselytizing about living in the now and not worrying about stuff and being a good person. I overheard him telling the young man and woman to beware of associating with rich people. I had to leave before he saw the smirk on my face. On the hike down, we bumped into the Nottingham couple, and they told us about the Glastonbury Music Festival, which they had just attended. They were really lovely and let me take a selfie with them. While we were at the top of the Tor, the rain started rolling in. You can see the rain clouds here. So our descent was a bit soggy. It turned out to be a good thing that it began raining because it made me put away my expensive wireless microphone that I was worried about damaging. But unfortunately, that fancy wireless mic was dead anyway, and so for the entire hike, all the filming I did, I had no audio. So I have no idea what I was saying in all these video clips I filmed because I don't read lips. But I think in this clip, I was complaining about the wind. And in this next clip, you can see the wind is so bad, I couldn't even hold the camera steady to film. We are walking down now in the rain. which is why I don't have my microphone on me. We were surprised that the whole journey up to the top and back down the hill did not take nearly as long as we expected. For us, from start to finish, it took about 45 minutes, with frequent filming stops for all the things. Now that we're down and off the hill, it's time to explore the town center of Glastonbury. I'm going to start by showing you rapid fire a bunch of things that I thought were interesting about this quirky little town, and just give you a feel for the free-spirited vibe of Glastonbury. Here in a colorful row of buildings is the In-Between Cottage. This town is full of things historical and mystical. I'll show you the mystical first, then our lunch, and then the historical, including the Abbey ruin and almshouses. Here is a smattering of the weird and wacky shops that line the streets of Glastonbury. In case you haven't noticed, I chose an appropriate shirt for today.
See, looking at this, I fit right in. Lovely magenta rhino mural he's painting.
The town is also full of delightful little alleys that are fun to explore. You never know what you might find. For example, a magenta till. I came in this shop with a magenta till and bought an otter card. Speaking of buying things, it's time for lunch. For lunch, we're stopping at My Fine Deli for a cheeky Plowman's because we're in Somerset after all. And yes, we got cheddar and some brie.
This is the biggest Plowman's I've ever seen. It should be on the menu as Plowman's for 2 or Plowman's for a family of 4. This is just massive. Beautifully. This is the most beautifully presented Plowman's I've ever seen as well. I'm really glad that Ian and I are splitting this. And here is another Burns the Bread bakery. Look at the delicious things in the window. Okay, what's a Torsey Morsey cake? And do we want to try it? Oh, fruitcake. Ooh, no. These many pasties are so adorable. They're like little empanadas. After looking at the Eccles cakes, Ian decided to get a cherry Danish, and I went for an iced Chelsea bun. So Trish, how long have you lived in Somerset?
I came into Somerset when I was 16 years old.
So that was a minute ago, yes.
Just a few years ago.
And before that, you lived in a county we love.
County Durham, on the borders with Northumberland.
Right, and we love Northumbria, so
And
that's
me.
exciting. That's exciting. Okay, so you've lived in Glastonbury specifically how long?
Lived in Glastonbury for 3 years, but I've known it for 75 years.
Okay, and what do you like about Glastonbury?
The weird and the wonderful. You never know what you're going to see or what you're going to expect. But wherever you go, you'll talk to somebody and you'll have a laugh and it'll be interesting.
Never a dull moment in Glastonbury?
Never a dull moment at all.
What's your favorite place to visit in Glastonbury?
Probably the Abbey.
You love the Abbey?
I love walking around the Abbey grounds at any time of the year.
Right.
There's so much to see, not just the Abbey grounds and not the Abbey itself, but the parkland that's around there is wonderful. There's 2 ponds. One is the fish pond that belongs to the Abbey, and the other is a big lake. And you've got squirrels, you've got badgers, you've got owls, you've got everything you could possibly want there.
Oh, well, everything I could want means you would need to have an otter.
Oh, sorry, no otters.
For dinner, we ate at the famous fish restaurant called Knight's, which has been selling fish for over 100 years. It's just down the street from the Who'da Thought It pub. To see more about our fish dinner and our taste test of haddock versus plaice, please see the video link in the description. Now let's look at some historical sites of interest in Glastonbury.
This was originally the Tithe Barn, and now it's a rural life museum.
Look up here at the top, it has a cow emblem. This is a really old hotel from the 1400s called the George and Pilgrims. I think this is the nicest, fanciest market cross I've ever seen. Kind of looks like a church steeple, but sure enough, there is a cross at the top of it. Speaking of churches, let's pay a quick visit to the parish church of St. John's before we visit the Abbey.
This is one of the Glastonbury thorns, the one that's planted on Wearyall Hill. And this one, every Christmas, a sprig is cut by the youngest choir boy in the church and taken to the king.
Wow, that's awesome. What a tradition.
The first church was built here in Saxon times, and the church was later expanded in the Norman period. St. Dunstan, the abbot of the Glastonbury Abbey, built this St. John's Church for the townspeople so that they had their own place of worship when the abbey became Benedictine and therefore not usable as a parish church. The church has gone through many renovations, including during Norman times, moving the tower from the center of the church when the original one collapsed in 1403. So now let's head over to the Abbey to learn more about this pivotal place in the history of Glastonbury. Trish kindly treated us to a tour of the Abbey, which was wonderful. An Anglo-Saxon monastery was founded here in the 7th century by St. Patrick and later expanded by St. David. It became a powerful and prominent abbey that attracted pilgrims during this time. In the 9th century, the Vikings destroyed the abbey, but it was rebuilt in the late 10th century. By 1066, the abbey was the second wealthiest in England and a premier attraction for medieval pilgrims. That's what happens when you have 300 relics. I've been to quite a few abbey ruins, but this one was rather unique. What surprised me the most was the link between the abbey and the tale of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. In 1184, the abbey was in dire need of funds after a devastating fire. Then, in 1191, the monks of Glastonbury Abbey allegedly discovered the graves of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere. Skeptics claim that this exhumation was staged to increase the prestige and pilgrimage and therefore the wealth of the abbey. The monks did uncover a tomb of a large man and a smaller skeleton of a woman with it. Whether this is the real King Arthur or whether King Arthur himself is fact or fiction, I will leave that up to you. Before 1539, Glastonbury was run by the monks from the abbey, who made all the decisions as if they were the town council. But all that changed during the dissolution of the monasteries. In 1539, the abbey was dissolved and its assets confiscated, and the abbot was executed. But in the 19th and 20th centuries, the abbey underwent massive restoration efforts, and this preservation work continues to this day. It is a beautiful abbey with expansive grounds which are well worth a visit. It is a fascinating and beautiful place steeped in history and legend, just like the rest of Glastonbury. One lovely and historic part of Glastonbury that many visitors overlook is this row of almshouses. These almshouses were built in the 15th century, carrying on the tradition of St. Mary Magdalene Hospital and royal almshouses that were originally founded to house 10 poor men. These refurbished almshouses and adjacent chapel are tucked away in a corner of Glastonbury, making them a peaceful and interesting place to visit after you have toured the town center. I hope you enjoyed this little magical mystery tour of Glastonbury. Please consider watching our fish dinner video here or one of these other favorite videos of Somerset. Thanks so much for your support and do something good in the world today.